Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and a very warm welcome to World This Morning. I'm your host Hajra Sati and joining me is Jawad Tehami. Assalamu alaikum Jawad, how are you doing?
I'm good. Doing wonderfully fine as ever. How are you doing today?
Alhamdulillah, fantastic. So we are going to kickstart our day by sharing a news about a United Nations report on the International Labour Organization about how there are 50 million people who are either in the forced labor or in the forced marriages. And that's quite a staggering amount, Jawad, considering the fact that we do have our own problems with the brick kiln owners who are making the children in the bottom labor. Of course, our state is very diligent in protecting the rights of it, but then the awareness component is we need to focus more on that, because there are a lot of children who should be in the schools instead of in the brick kilns doing work, and the conditions are so bad there that they often die in there. They're not aware even of their rights that Constitution has granted to them. But then again, this is how the state of a country is, and we need to make sure that we work on them, and we need to eliminate this menace of bonded labor. Exactly.
Of course, there should be awareness, and there should be proper campaigns and the programs. We should be actually focused on this particular thing and providing kind of an awareness to not only children and to their parents as well, because in the far-flung areas and in remote areas, we see such type of bonded labor happening, and the government should also chalk out a strategy, a comprehensive strategy in order to curb such type of things.
True. And moving on to our top story, which is about how our Prime Minister is flying to Samarkand on a 2-day visit for the SCO meeting on the head of the state. This is, I think, his first visit as the head of the state to Samarkand, and he will meet different leaders in that forum, and he's attending the annual meeting of the Council of the Head of the State of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. And Jawad, I'm really glad that Pakistan has representation in the different blocs, and I think that is a very good strategy, a very good foreign policy when it comes to that, because the globe is moving from unilateralism towards the multipolarity, and we need to make sure that we have representation in different poles, because this is how I think we will progress when it comes to as a country, especially on the foreign policy
Exactly,
front.
and the significance of this particular visit by Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif to the heads of the councils of state of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization increases manyfold since Pakistan became a permanent member of SCO back in 2017. Pakistan has been playing a pivotal role in order to achieve all those objectives and the goals of the Charter of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Especially when you talk about the multipolarity, the world is moving towards connectivity, and one of the important projects that we often talk about is Belt and Road Initiative, and the flagship project of that is CPAC. So the significance, the strategic significance in terms of connectivity beyond borders and beyond regions of Pakistan increases manifold. But at the same time, when we see Pakistan having hit by devastating floods recently, and Pakistan is currently doing its utmost in order to avert that catastrophic situation in Pakistan, Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif would definitely have this opportunity to talk to the world leaders of this region that, look, climate change is directly impacting Pakistan for the wrongdoings of the industrialized nations, and SCO needs to come together to chalk out a joint strategy and mechanism in order to curb the carbon emissions.
That's very true. And when we talk about the climate change, of course, it's very intricately linked with the environmental degradation. And Pakistan has a lot of glaciers, lot of different diverse ecological systems. And we are witnessing how they're experiencing degradation because of the climate change, because of the environment impact. So we have someone in the studio who's exactly going to lay out the details. Of course, Pakistan is a very diverse country, and I'm really proud of that. But then again, we have a lot of glaciers, and a lot of people are saying that when there is a glacier melt because of the global warming, we will witness a lot of flooding, and we are going to witness the devastating impacts. But there is someone in the
Pakistan is blessed to have the confluence of three bigger mountain ranges that include Himalayas, the Hindu Kush, and the Koh Suleiman range. Now, when we talk about these, of course, when we talk specifically about Himalayas, it's one of the most unique geological activity that took place over here, and they have immense number of glaciers, and they are melting because of the global warming, the climatic changes that are happening. But not only Himalayas, such type of orogenic activities happened all around the world, in the Alps as well, and when we talk the Appalachians as well. Now, all the glaciers, not only in Himalayas, but also in Alps, they are melting at a rapid pace. And to talk about this particular thing, this is really a burning issue.
Right.
We are joined by two very special guests in our studio today. We're joined by Professor Dr. Khaliquzaman, who is a neurosurgeon, and he leads expeditions around the world, not only in Himalayas, but also in the Alps as well. And we are also pleased to have been joined by Mr. Bart Jordans. He's also an author, he's a Dutch traveler, and he also leads expeditions around the world, particularly he had been to Himalayas with many expeditions, and he has got something really interesting to share with us. So let's begin the discussion with you, Mr. Jordan. So you've been to Himalayas, you've been leading the expedition, the trekking expeditions. Of course, you've been to Alps in Austria and Switzerland as well. First of all, I would like to ask you the difference between the kind of orogeny that Himalayas has and the Austrian and Switzerland and French Alps have.
The Himalayas is much younger than the Alps. That's one thing. That's the biggest difference. That means also that the glaciers are younger, are bigger than the Alps, and the impact is also bigger here in this area than in the Alps. And there's still also, of course, some earthquakes here, which also work on the whole Himalayas, what it can change. But it's an overwhelming nature here, which is so much bigger than the Alps. That's the big difference between, I would say, the Alps and, if you can generalize it in one or two sentences, because it's a huge area. Yeah. And if you talk about Himalayas, which of course is stopping in Nanga Parbat, you still got the Karakoram, which again is the next mountain range, and that's where we walk a lot. That's where we just have been with Dr.
Okay,
Khalid.
lovely. That's lovely. So, Dr. Saab, I will come to you because Dr. Saab has been on our show a lot of times and he's very apt considering his field of the medicine, but now he's venturing into a very different sort of a terrain, and it's really nice because I think we need to have different sort of experience when it comes to that. So, Dr. Saab, you have been with Mr. Jordans to the northern areas and you experienced the K2 base camp. How was the experience about that?
Oh, it was probably we are blessed with heaven on earth.
That's true.
Let me tell you this, that if you go from Ascole right up to K2 base camp, it's like you are not in this world at all. We should be thankful to God for all that we have. There are lakes, there are snow mountains, there are glaciers, there are rivers, there are so many colors and so many variety that every, say, half an hour or an hour walk or trekking, you completely think that you're in a different world altogether. Fresh air and colorful sky. When it's cloudy, it's even more colorful. If it is raining, we had the experience of having a rain as well. So it was exactly like that. And let me tell you this, just at the foothill of K2, when we were coming back, we came on the glacier. And it was so smooth because most of the glaciers, if you see, they are actually covered with a lot of stones and they're loose. So it's very difficult to walk on them or trek on them. But when we were coming back, we were brought back by our guide on the glacier that was really just like landing, the plane landing on the runway. No. So I had the experience of my life, and let me please correct you, I'm not a guide. Okay. Actually, I have a guide. Okay. So we were introduced we got introduced about 2 years ago, or a year ago, and 2 years ago. And then
so ever since you've been going with Mr. Bart on the expedition, so breathtaking views and the sights you just described, I would definitely love to go. But we've seen in the past couple of weeks that northern area has been devastated by the floods, and we saw that roads and rail networks have been severely damaged. So immense tourism potential is there for Pakistan in northern areas. But after such devastation, what do you think, what could be the scope for tourism in Pakistan?
Well, the scope of tourism in Pakistan will never finish.
True.
Every time Bart would really bear me out, that every time you go, you get into a different field altogether. You have a different feeling. There is a change in the views and also the tracks. So therefore, you see, there is a variety. And this variety will go on. And let me say this, that there might be they might be melting everywhere, and people might be thinking that we are going to really lose glaciers and this and that. What I saw with my own eyes, I feel we have a treasure that will never finish in the generations to come. So I have this positive impact, because the other thing is the floods this time has changed its trajectory. For example, in Balochistan and Sindh and also Little Punjab. But as we go up north, the flooding is not that much, although it must have had an impact. For example, when we were crossing two rivers, one of the bridge was washed away, and we had to go in a little trolley that went along with a rope. And also we had to walk on kind of small branches to cross the river, quite flooding river. But then it was just normal, because last time when I went, that was about 2-3 years ago, I felt that there was no difference as far as the flooding was concerned between then and there. I think we had 1 or 2 occasions when initially there was a bridge that was actually washed away, and that really had an impact on the travelers. And that's what people told me, that there was a lot of influx of the tourists from all over Pakistan. Previously it used to be from abroad, but this time when the floods, when that bridge was shown on the television, that was, I think it was in Hunza Valley or somewhere.
No, more to the east.
Yeah, so that was like there was a break for the travelers that they really reduced. But most of the time, I think, as I said, this treasure everlasting in the northern area.
That's very true, and I always advocate traveling, because when you see the infinite beings such as mountains, such as stars, that definitely change the way that you look at your life. And because I do feel we are so much engaged in the cacophony of the everyday life that we forget the broader or the higher dimensions of our life, the broader or higher love. And I do feel that the connecting with nature helps you a lot in your evolution, helps you a lot in reflecting. So coming back to Mr. Jordan, so you have been in Pakistan since 1989, and you have been organizing the expedition, the trekking, and it's been more than 3 decades, right? Yeah. So you have witnessed that there have been some changes in that area ecologically, and there is a movement in the world about the nature movement, about the rights of the nature of the movement, where ecological systems are considered like human beings which have some rights, right? And they have a profound impact on the local communities and also on the national identity. For example, River Indus in Pakistan, we are the predecessors of one of the oldest civilizations, the Indus civilization. How do you feel the local communities in our northern areas feel about these ecological systems?
They're working on it. They definitely, they try to. They're trying hard. And they get help sometimes, sometimes not. They do their own work. They're working hard on it. That's typical. I mean, if you work there in these areas also as porters, and they join you on the trek, they're very honest, hard-working people. And they try with the nature, but they do their best. But I mean, it's like, then there's no money anymore to repair bridges or to make whatever new channels or new dams or something. Right. But they're trying. They're doing really hard their best. These are the changes. If it's just one more thing, like no changes, like I've been first time to K2 trek in 1989. Right. And I think like the glaciers are just not retreating, because I've been there now 14 times to K2 base camp. And getting to the snout of the Baltoro or the snout of the Biafo Glacier, which are very near. Right. They're not retreating. I know we're talking about global warming, and they should retreat, and they do in the Alps, and they do in Nepal, but not as much in the Karakoram.
I think we need to commission a study to, find out why is this phenomena, right? Because
we are more northern, I think, on the northern latitude, and that's why it's a little bit colder. I'm not a geologist or glaciist, but I think because we're more northern and it's also colder, that's why we don't go here in October, November. It's too cold. We go in Nepal in October, November. It's not too cold. So that's why we can just we deal better with it here, I think, in Pakistan. So they don't melt as quickly as they do in other places in the world. Right.
And we also have the pictures. So can he explain them? These are the, I think they're gone now, so our producer Sab will have the pictures on the screen. So moving back onto your book, I believe it's being in the process of publishing about the trekking. Yeah. So why did you felt the need of having that book?
I think we could always have an update with new changes, because it keeps on changing. There's new roads going to be built, new bridges or things disappear again due to landslides or whatever. That's why we need some new books. And people like to read a book before when they are back home, they want to see, hey, I'm going to go on this trek, let's read as much as possible about it. So I'm trying to put in as much as possible background information as well. Not just only the simple facts like walking from A to B, from B to C, but just a lot of background information, which I've collected through the years. So hopefully
So,
it's...
Mr. Jordan,
we do have some, so I'm sorry I'm cutting you,
sure.
some videos, and I think would you like to
This is on the
deliberate?
glacier in the Baltoro, and this is typical one of the glacier streams on the Baltoro Glacier.
Lovely, and they're so pure. I mean,
I actually took this video, made this video.
Lovely.
And you can see the water, and water is actually moving through the ice.
Right.
And it was a view that I thought I would see in heaven.
Lovely.
And I saw it in the north of Pakistan. To be honest, I just was flabbergasted. And you must have seen a young boy that, look, this is the place where the river was, the bridge was washed away.
Right.
So there were just 3 logs that were set, and we had to balance our act in order to test our well. And this is like, all these stones that you see, this is actually glacier. But this white thing is like, I call them as pyramids of snow that compare them with pyramids of the
Egyptian pyramids.
the Egypt.
Right.
And this is now K2 base camp.
Right.
And that was like we reached there. And this young boy of 19, he was actually, it was his first time, but his father had come 32 years ago.
Right.
And now he came along with his father.
Lovely.
And he was so excited that he actually would go beyond us, ahead of us with porters.
Okay, pardon me for interrupting you, but which exactly area is this?
You see, that is the middle,
Baltoro.
Baltoro.
Going up to Concordia and then finally to K2 base camp.
There are different camps.
Mr. Jordan, beg your pardon for the interruption. As you have correlated these snow-covered pyramids with the Egyptian pyramids, what is the most phenomenal and the significant thing that you have experienced there in the Himalayas?
It's working with the Pakistani porters and the staff, which do a really hard and a very good job. And they always with a big smile, even in bad weather. It's just amazing. The service is just fantastic.
Okay, and
really.
and you mentioned that there are a lot of, I'm begging your pardon, that there are a lot of glaciers and the high peaks in the Europe too, and the other parts of the world. Why specifically you choose Himalayas?
Well, sorry, there I say Karakoram, not Himalayas. We are in the Karakoram now, if we not count on Nanga Parbat.
Okay.
Because it's so impressive. The peaks are so pointy. And like when you go more to Nepal, it's getting more flat, and the Alps even again because it's older there, so it's more flat. So it's not as impressive. The Karakoram is so pointy, and there's so many peaks of 7,000 meters.
That it gives to the trackers coming to Pakistan for expeditions from around the globe. So how does it feel like when you go for tracking on such pointed peaks?
Because it's so remote and so difficult and so tough and dangerous as well, because many loose rocks and avalanches coming down. So it's not easy. It's hard work. And you can feel it. Your whole body is just like finished when you've done that trek, and your shoes are finished, and that's not what you have in Nepal. If you do a trek in Nepal, gentle trails, nice, and villages. No, there's no villages here. It's very remote. So you start your trek from the last village, and then you're just in the nature. A tough nature, but beautiful, overwhelming. Yeah.
Right. Thank you so much, Professor Khaliquzaman Saab, and thank you so much, Mr. Jordan, for enlightening us about the northern areas and how it's such a beautiful place to be there and experience the nature. And I do feel, especially in a digitalized age where we are so much into the gadgets and into the electronic gadgets, that we do not find time enough to connect with the nature. And I do feel that we need to connect with the nature. And Pakistan offers such a diverse landscape, and especially in the northern areas, we have K2, which is the second highest peak. So you wanted to add something?
Yes, I just want to say, tell you, while I was on the track, it was the greatest spiritual experience, and I felt connected to my Almighty.
That's true, that's true, because that reminds you of your nothingness. You are nothing, while these are such infinite and huge being. Where do you exist in this entire scheme of the things. So, and we are very lucky that Pakistan has been blessed by such kind of peaks, and we are very glad that people are also coming in and going on to the trekking. And Pakistan used to be a very famous destination for that, especially when it comes to the global south. So today is also the World Democracy Day. So before going on to the break, I would like to introduce this topic, and then after coming to a break, we will talk more about the Democracy Day. But before that, I would really want to thank you to my two of the guests for enlightening us about it. Jazakallah
The
for
tourism
coming.
potential in Pakistan.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much for being on this.
Right. So we're going on a short break. So we'll be right back.
Book is life. Book is hope. And book is light for the future.
Welcome back. And so we were talking about how it's World Democracy Day, and one of my favorite quotes about the democracy is from our former Prime Minister Benazir Bhutto Jawad, and I would really like to share it with you. She says that democracy is the sound of the clash of the ideas. It is such a simplistic, short definition, but yet it is so profound and powerful that I would always use it in my essays during my student life, and I would garner a lot of good marks because of that. So we need to have...
There is another lovely quote by Mr. Abraham Lincoln,
Okay, go on.
the 16th president. It's very simple and straightforward. It is the form of the government for the people, by the people,
True.
some sort of
True.
quote like
True,
that.
true.
So democracy is that form of the government which is actually meant for people, so to deliver
Right.
to the very aspirations of the people what they aspire. On the
Right.
basis of these democratic struggles,
Right.
we got this independent country, because
Right.
most of the subcontinent wanted to aspire all those things, all those goals, achieve all those goals in a
Right.
separate homeland, and
Right.
create a democratic state where they could have that say and they could be heard.
True, true, true. And to talk more about democracy and to tell you more about how it works, we have the visual representation, because we feel the visual representation works better than us talking about it. So let's go and have a short look at the package which is made by my team on the democracy.
The International Day of Democracy is celebrated around the world on 15th September each year. It was established through a resolution passed by the UN General Assembly in 2007, encouraging governments to strengthen and consolidate democracy. Cornerstones of democracy include freedom of assembly, association, property rights, freedom of religion and speech, inclusiveness and equality, citizenship, consent of the governed, voting rights, freedom from unwarranted governmental deprivation of the right to life and liberty, and minority rights. The notion of democracy has evolved over time considerably. The original form of democracy was a direct democracy. The most common form of democracy today is a representative democracy, where the people elect government officials to govern on their behalf, such as in a parliamentary or presidential democracy. The International Day of Democracy provides an opportunity to review the state of democracy in the world. Democracy is as much a process as a goal, and only with the full participation of and support by the international community, national governing bodies, civil society, and individuals can the ideal of democracy be made into a reality to be enjoyed by everyone, everywhere. International Democracy Day stems from our core belief that democracy requires the participation of all citizens. It is an opportunity to highlight the important role of parliaments and to celebrate their capacity and mandate to deliver on justice, peace, development, and human rights.
Wow, so democracy, as my wonderful co-host mentioned, is a system of the people, by the people, and for the people, which is very simplistic yet very profound in its essence. So after the fall of the USSR, Francis Fukuyama wrote a book about the end of the history, and he mentioned that democracy is the end point of an evolution of the human history, which means that the democracy is the best system that is in place in our human history. And we saw a lot of people, a lot of nations around the world were adopting democracy as a system. So we're going to talk more about the democracy.
There is another book by Francis Fukuyama, The Origins of the Political Decay, and there is another book related to that one as well, and in which he very clearly, with a lot of research and a lot of authentic references, he goes on to write there is a difference, the kind of thing that you've just mentioned, the evolution of a political system in a certain region. So there is a huge difference of how democracy evolved over the years in European continent as compared to that of Indian subcontinent as well as in China.
But there was localized aspect of that, right, where different people have
but the pattern on which it was developing, it was quite different as in China and India as compared to Europe. That's why it has flourished more in Europe, less in subcontinent and China.
Okay, so we are going to talk more about it, but we have a wonderful guest in the studio who is author, who is also motivational speaker, and who also happens to be on our show a lot of time and has enlightened us about so many concepts. So we are very lucky that we have been joined by Sabahuddin Saab. Assalamu alaikum, and thank you so much for coming to our show.
Majda, it's a pleasure to be with you.
Right, sir. So I mentioned Francis Fukuyama and the book he wrote about the ideological evolution of the mankind, which is the democracy. Why do we feel the need, because democracy is the predominant concept of the governance, to observe this day in the first place?
I think when we say democracy, it means we are indicating a natural form of governance. When I say natural form, it means if I take you to the earliest days of humanity, the Homo sapiens and the later Neanderthals, how they evolved.
Right.
How they were behaving with each other as a small band of tribes, and how they were behaving as families with other families. So when we see that they were following certain rules that we have adopted as democracy.
Right.
And the democracy is subject to change. It has been evolving, and it will evolve. And even when we bemoan and cry about the state of democracy in countries like ours, we forget that the democracy, even now, it is supposed to evolve.
Right. That's very true, because it's a human system, and human system always evolves when it comes to our evolution, right?
With the changing needs of the time, the political system and the governance system changes. Likewise, the economic system also change over the years, over the millennia. We have seen the economic system that is in place right now that was not in place 1,000 years back. With the advent of agriculture, the economic system took a different direction, and then came the Industrial Revolution, and then we saw the French Revolution. So Then we saw the War of Independence the United States got from its British rule. So the major events happening and the direction of the time and the history changing, and with the advent of such type of things happening, newer concepts, newer ideas came in and they took root. You never know. We can't. I would like to back to contest that if somebody calls democracy the end point of the political system or human evolution in terms of politics and economics, there might be some other very innovative concept in the later days to come.
Democracy isn't the end point. It's rather a point from where we have started to identify what we mean, what we need to coexist with each other, how to survive in a diverse environment, how to behave with each other.
Exactly. It sets a direction towards some end goal.
Yes. Now, if
So
you
it's a
see
means to
the basic idea, when I say democracy is natural, I say that it is the basic thing that humanity has learned to survive with each other. So when we say democracy, we said France took 176 years to be where it is now.
Right.
Exactly. Likewise, it goes with Britain as well. The glorious revolution in
all the modern
1688.
countries and all the modern democracies have suffered carnage, bloodshed, dictatorships, and it has been the concept of democracy has been interrupted umpteen times.
Right.
But at last we have reached the conclusion that this is the only way, this is the natural way to survive, this is the natural way to benefit each
Why
other.
do we call it natural? Because is it based on the principle of cooperation among the human beings rather than the will and the power of a single mind claiming it to be his or her divine right or being the hand of God?
Well, I think you have answered it yourself. When we say about the human rights, the concept of human rights, we can't find it in any other system than the democracy. When you say the concept of equality and equity, then we look towards democracy. When you say that everyone should have a voice, everyone should have an opinion, we look towards democracy. I think that's why it is natural. And believe me, when you study all the contemporary religions, all the basics, including our religion, the concept of adl, the concept of ijma, the concept of shura.
It's the developing consensus.
It's all natural. That's why I say democracy is the natural form of the governance that we are following.
And giving every responsible citizen a level playing field to come forward and give their input in the issues that matter.
Okay. Before you answer that, I would really like to ask you, do you feel that the democracy serves the human needs and the needs of the commoners, and that is why we are able to solve the disasters or the calamity more better in a democratic system than as compared to the authoritarian one?
You know what the best thing about democracy? That every opinion is heard, every voice is heard. And you know what the worst thing about this democracy? That every opinion, unfortunately, the majority of it is invalid. It is misinformed. It is least educated. So when you say the government, by the people, for the people, from the people, it has become the government of least educated, for the least educated, from the least educated. The solution lies here.
So education being the prerequisite for a democratic state to function, and that's what we see in the instance of England as well, as there was a struggle going on between monarchy and the commoners who were going for establishing democratic state over there. But there was a regular development of education system as well.
Exactly. And to take it further, like Hajra said, that does this democracy satisfy our requirements as a society, as needs? For now, partially maybe. But this is the only system we have. This is the only system we have to make sure the responsibility of making democracy successful. When people say it's a failed democracy, I disagree with them.
Right.
The democracy never fails. The values are same. The people implementing democracy fail.
True.
Societies fail. So when we talk about those who are responsible to strengthen democracy are the civil society, the judiciary, the independent media, and these three can come together and make the corrections wherever it's required. And democracy, in a way, now you see, last night when we were discussing this topic, so I was given a hint that, we are suffering the floods and devastation, all over. Now we know if you remove democratic institutions from the response to this devastation, then we are left nowhere.
So, Mr. Salahuddin, when it comes to the opinion of the common people and the free media, this time around the theme and the focus of the International Day for Democracy is the freedom of speech, expression, and creating pluralistic media. Now, when we talk about the largest democracy in the world in the contemporary times, we've seen a continuous clampdown on the freedom of expression and speech over there, not only within that country itself, but also in the illegally occupied territory that is Jammu and Kashmir. Since 2019, August 2019, there's been a continuous clampdown on communication, and the journalists have been detained under draconian laws that include the Unlawful Prevention Activities Prevention Act. Your take on that?
I really like because you brought up this topic. First of all, addressing the freedom of speech. Freedom of speech is fine, you know. This is the basic endeared, I should say, the quality of democracy. But when we look, like where you indicated in Jammu and Kashmir, I think that in this entire world, one worst example of a democratic country implementing state terrorism in an occupied territory where there are thousands of soldiers against one common citizen. I think people need to see and people need to understand when we say democracy, and India, of course, it claims to be, you know, one of the biggest democracies in the world. They had to see if the democracy, the principles are being implemented or not.
Right. So I would say, sir, that the concept of the local government system is very intrinsical to the concept of democracy, because democracy works best when the power is devolved to the people, right? And in Pakistan, we have seen that we have NDMA, especially to respond to the disaster management situation. And then we have PDMAs, which is sort of a devolution of the power, right? And we have seen that Pakistani state is doing really well in tackling this flooding situation, considering the fact that so much water has crept into our country that it's very difficult to, disperse the aid. It's very difficult to look out for each and every person, because 33 million people are affected by that. So what is your take on that, especially considering the fact that the local government system, they are very essential to the working, good functioning of the democracy?
I agree. I think local governments make the foundation of the basic democracy in a country.
True.
And it actually assists all the organizations in place to create a response, be it the natural disasters or something else. I really second you in this. But you see, the question here is of the governance. When we say democracy, it is governance actually, how you govern people, how you govern it well. Now, if the floods have come, it's again a question of governance.
Right.
Were we sleeping? Were we, you know, resting? We had no threat assessments. Were we not aware of the national, you know, this non-traditional security threat assessments we had? Definitely we had. Right. So what we have done for that?
But then again, the amount of the water that has just crept into our country, it is just unimaginable. It has never happened before.
No, it has happened before. It has happened in
was the flood in all four provinces? No.
It has, you know, the level of devastation, I agree, is big, is colossal.
Right,
it's colossal.
right. So
but it has been happening. Since childhood, I have been seeing it on TV, that flood, you know, the rivers are swelling up and, you know, the flash floods are coming in. So the questions are what we have done about it so far. And again, since the topic is democracy,
right.
democracy and the democratic institutions and the democratic governments are the only measure and the enabled entities to respond. Nobody else can do that.
Okay, so coming back to my another point, which is about, like we mentioned, that democracy is constantly evolving, right? And Plato's Republic says that the democracy actually marginalizes the wise people, because Plato was actually killed because of this democratic system. Do you think it has evolved enough to incorporate the voice of the wise people and not marginalize them, through which it started?
If you're pointing towards oligarchy, or if you're pointing towards, you know, the Greek system, I don't second that, because everyone deserves to be heard. But the problem is, when he's speaking, when he's trying to make his point, we should make sure that he's making an aware statement. He is in the state of awareness. He's educated on that topic. We don't want those people who just want to go and vote because their forefathers have voted for a particular party or a particular tribe or a particular family. In Pakistan, the politics is divided. Families, castes, tribes, even sects.
So and then when you talk about somebody being very well informed before making an opinion on that certain specific thing, so education being the prerequisites for a democratic system to function properly, if the entire population is not that much educated, do you think the media could be an alternative for them to be aware about the issues that are pressing and that matter the most?
I think media is the main stream that can actually create awareness about any system in Pakistan, about anything, any issue, creating the correct awareness. But unfortunately, what we see that we are influenced by the external media. We take them more credible, but we don't believe in our own media. So the media has to work upon its reputation. The media has to work upon the topics it is choosing for, proliferation amongst the people. So I think media could play a great role, and in the democracy, media is a pillar.
So what about digital media, social media, as we live in the age of digital media? Could it be an alternative to the proper schooling, the education system?
I can't say that it is an alternative to the existing system of education and awareness, but it could be one of the most potent and one of the most flexible, and dynamic structure where we can float good ideas, debate on them, and then try to choose for ourselves. Amongst the many narratives that float, choosing the correct narrative is a choice.
Okay, so there is this intellectual pursuit within the democratic system of giving voice to everyone and one person equals to one vote. Of course, there have been exceptions to this rule around the world, especially when it comes to America. But then again, if you look at the Islamic system, it focuses on the collective wisdom. And democracy says it's the collective wishes, right? And Benazir also wrote a book before she passed away about the reconciliation between Islam and democracy. So do you feel that democracy is adept that much that it incorporates the collective wisdom too in its system of the functioning? What is your opinion about it?
As Allama Iqbal says, bandon ko gina karte hain, tola nahi karte. So this is the basic essence when we talk about people and their votes, and to see that who has the majority of the opinion. Collective wisdom is the basis of democracy.
Right.
But if that is collective wisdom, I hope it doesn't become the collective stupidity, because you see the lot of majority of people following, something that is absurd. So in democracy, it's a very, very thin line to decide about what is the collective wisdom or what is the collective absurdity.
Okay, so we would like to wrap up this segment by summarizing the quote that Mr. Sabauddin just said, that the collective wisdom is inherent to the democracy, but then it can veer off to something another, and we need to look out for such kind of loopholes, because again, this is a human system. It is constantly evolving when it comes to that, and evolution means that we need to straighten out our flaws and incorporate the good system, the good things into this concept which we call democracy, right? Jawad, so with that we will say thank you so much to Mr. Sabauddin for joining us and enlightening us about the democratic system around the world and in our country too. So with that we will bid farewell, and we will come again with another good episode, with another good research, and with another good guest. So until then time, it's a goodbye and good morning.